At 600 hours Greenwich Mean Time, the sky over Earth turned to fire. The first missiles came without warning. They tore through the upper atmosphere like falling stars, leaving trails of light that burned brighter than the sun. For a few seconds, people thought it was some rare meteor shower. Then the ground started shaking and the world began to die. In Jakarta, Marcus Webb was making breakfast for his two daughters. Sarah wanted toast. Emma wanted pancakes. His wife, Lisa, had already left for work. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning until the windows filled with white light. He had time to whisper only two words. "Oh God." The explosion that followed tore the house apart. Marcus was thrown across the kitchen, landing in a pile of debris. His ears rang. His body screamed in pain. He tried to move, choking on dust and smoke. The air was thick with the smell of burning plastic and blood. "Sarah, Emma." No answer. Only the crackle of fire and the distant roar of collapsing buildings. When he finally dragged himself outside, the entire neighborhood was gone. Half the city was gone. The sky was a ceiling of flames. Towers had fallen. Roads had vanished beneath boiling rivers of molten glass. Somewhere behind him, a child was crying. Somewhere else, people screamed for help. But Marcus didn't hear any of it. His eyes stared at the place where his daughter's room used to be, now nothing but ash. He dropped to his knees, covered in dust and blood, and screamed until his voice broke. On the other side of the planet, buried deep beneath the Pacific Command Center, Admiral Chen Wei was running. The alarms had already been screaming for several minutes when she burst into the command room. Her officers were shouting over each other, screens flashing red, communications channels flooded. "Report," she barked. Lieutenant Torres turned to her, pale and sweating. "Multiple unknown contacts dropping out of slipspace, everywhere, ma'am, over every major city." "Any identification?" "None, they're not responding to any hails, there." A fresh explosion shook the bunker. The lights flickered. The ground trembled. Chen gripped the nearest console to steady herself. "They're firing on us." Chen looked at the tactical display. The holographic globe of Earth was surrounded by hundreds of red dots, enemy ships. They encircled the planet like a steel noose. Her blood ran cold. "They're everywhere." "Jakarta's gone, ma'am," another officer reported. "We're losing Sao Paulo, Mumbai, oh my God, they're hitting the oceans." Chen forced her voice to stay steady. "Activate every orbital defense platform. Get me the lunar grid." "Already destroyed, Admiral. First wave took it out." Her jaw clenched. "Then contact Mars. Tell them to power up the old missile platforms." "Negative response. Mars is too far, they can't help." The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Earth was alone. Above the burning world, the Zenthak fleet moved with brutal precision. Their ships were vast, angular things, metal beasts with claws of plasma and hearts of fusion fire. On the command vessel Zethra Prime, Overseer T'Challa stood before a viewing window, watching Earth's continents burn. To him it was not horror, it was strategy. The Zenthak were an old race, powerful but cautious. Their empire had survived millennia by removing threats before they could grow. Humanity, with its rapid progress and unpredictable aggression, had worried them for years. "They breed fast," T'Challa had told the High Council. "They learn faster. Today they reach their moons. Tomorrow they reach our worlds." And so the decision had been made. Eliminate humanity. Now, as the bombardment continued, T'Challa clasped his clawed hands behind his back and spoke calmly to his tactical officer. "Status report. 60% of planetary infrastructure destroyed, Overseer. Civilian casualties beyond calculation." "Good. Continue bombardment for another 12 hours. Leave them enough survivors to remember their defeat." The officer hesitated, "And if they resist?" T'Challa smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "Then we burn the rest." In the underground command center, Chen stood before the display showing casualty numbers climbing higher with each passing second. 15 billion, Torres whispered. 20 billion. The numbers meant nothing anymore, just digits on a screen, each one a life extinguished. A voice came through the static. "Admiral Chen, this is Defense Node Delta. We've lost communication with the European sector. We're blind on half the globe." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, then she straightened. "Send out all remaining ships. Prioritize civilian evacuation. I don't care if it's a shuttle, a mining rig, or a garbage scow, get people off the planet. But ma'am, Tor said quietly, there's nowhere safe to go. Chen's voice was iron. Then they'll die trying, move. As her officers scrambled, a new transmission appeared on the screen, alien symbols scrolling rapidly, then translated into human language. Message from ZNTHAC Command. Human civilization has been deemed a threat to galactic stability. Lay down your weapons. Accept permanent supervision by the Zenthak Collective. Refusal will result in extinction. The command room fell silent. Everyone stared at Chen. She read the message again. Then she whispered, they want us to live as slaves. Tors swallowed hard. Should we respond? Chen turned to face her crew. Her voice was low but carried to every corner of the room. They came to our home, they murdered our families, they thought we'd break, they thought we'd beg, they were wrong. She looked at Tors. No response, not now, not ever. But Admiral, send orders to all surviving installations, every colony, every shipyard, every scientist still breathing. She drew in a sharp breath. Tell them to prepare. Tors blinked. Prepare for what? Chen looked up at the burning sky on the monitor, her eyes reflecting the light of dying cities. For war, she said. For 3 days, the bombardment continued. Entire continents turned black, oceans boiled into steam. Civilization collapsed into silence. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The Zenthak fleet withdrew, leaving behind a planet of ash and ghosts. From orbit, Earth looked like a dying ember in space, still glowing faintly but fatting fast. THRL sent one final message. You have 30 days to surrender. Refuse, and we will return. There was no answer. 30 days passed, then 60, then 90. The galaxy waited for a response that never came. To outsiders, it looked like Earth had been destroyed, its people either dead or too broken to speak. No ships left the solar system, no transmissions were sent, just silence. But deep beneath the burned crust, in hidden bunkers and underground cities, humanity was not dead. They were building. In the remains of what was once Australia, massive construction tunnels stretched for miles. Engineers worked without rest, forging the skeletons of warships. Factories in the asteroid belt churned out engines and rail cannons. The old Mars colonies became testing grounds for new weapons. And in one of those tunnels, Marcus Webb stood before a machine the size of a skyscraper, a rail cannon designed to launch tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. He ran his hand along its cold surface. You'll make them remember, he whispered. An older engineer beside him frowned. You ever sleep, Webb? Not since Jakarta. Back in the Pacific Command Center, Admiral Chen stared at a wall covered in photos, millions of faces sent from civilians across the world before the communication blackout. Families, children, lovers, soldiers, scientists, every face a reminder. She placed her hand on the wall and spoke quietly. We'll make it mean something. Colonel Martinez entered, holding a data pad. We've got new numbers. The lunar yards are online. Asteroid refineries at full capacity. If production keeps pace, we'll have the first prototypes ready in 3 months. Chen turned to him. 3 months to start building our future. No, ma'am, Martinez said. 3 months to start building our revenge. Chen said nothing for a long time. Then she nodded. Then let's begin. In orbit above the scarred planet, the Zenthak listening probes picked up faint signals, irregular bursts of encrypted transmissions, buried deep in radio noise. Most Zenthak analysts dismissed them as background interference from the destroyed human networks. But one Zenthak commander, Zelthos, wasn't so sure. Those aren't random, he told his subordinates. They're organized, coordinated. His second-in-command laughed. You think the humans are rebuilding after that? They're barely alive. Zelthos looked at the dark shape of Earth on his screen. You don't know humans. The galaxy believes humanity is gone. But deep beneath the ashes, engines are roaring to life. And in the dark, humanity whispers the same word over and over. Vengeance. 6 months had passed since the bombardment. The stars over Earth still looked the same, but the world below was unrecognizable. The once blue oceans were scarred by black swirls of ash. Cities that had once gleamed with light were now lifeless ruins, jagged silhouettes against an orange sky. In orbit, shattered satellites drifted in silence, glinting faintly in the sun like floating tombstones. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was a dead world. But beneath its scorched crust, humanity was very much alive. Admiral Chen Wei stood in what had once been a command bunker beneath the Pacific Ocean. Now it was the beating heart of a world preparing for vengeance. Every corridor buzzed with energy. Engineers carried data pads. Soldiers marched past technicians repairing worn equipment. The air smelled faintly of oil, metal, and recycled oxygen. "Status report," Chen ordered as she entered the central command chamber. Colonel Martinez stepped forward, handing her a data pad. His uniform was smudged with grease and ash, but his posture was sharp as ever. "The Luna shipyards are back online, ma'am. Asteroid belt operations are running at 120% of estimated yield. Mars reports successful test firing of long-range rail systems." Chen's eyes scanned the data, and Earth. "We've converted civilian facilities into production centers. Every surviving factory is working on weapons or ship components. Civilian morale is stable." "Stable?" Chen raised an eyebrow. Martinez hesitated. "They're angry, Admiral, and they want blood." Chen nodded slowly. "Good, anger we can use, fear we cannot." Meanwhile, far beyond Earth's orbit, on the edge of the solar system, the Vorine diplomatic vessel Harmony's light drifted quietly among the stars. Inside its silver, whale-like hull, Ambassador Kelleth gazed out through a transparent observation dome. Her large, deep-set eyes shimmered with bioluminescent blue, a natural trait of her kind. The Vorine were known across the galaxy as peacemakers, scholars, and healers. But even she felt a tremor of unease as she stared at the silent planet. "Send another transmission," she said softly. Her communications officer, a thin creature with fins instead of ears, turned toward her. "Ambassador, this will be the 51st message. They have not responded to a single one." "Then send 52. The officer obeyed, transmitting a simple message toward Earth. "This is Ambassador Kelleth of the Vorine Collective. We offer aid, medical assistance, and humanitarian support. Please respond." The message vanished into the void. No reply came. The silence was heavier than any explosion. Kelleth exhaled slowly. "They're alive down there," she whispered. Her security chief frowned. "You can't know that. Our long-range sensors detect power fluctuations and industrial emissions from multiple sites," she said, pointing at the holographic map. "Those are not random signals. That is organization." The security chief folded his arms. "Then they are rebuilding." Kelleth nodded. "And if they are rebuilding after losing 20 billion souls," she turned back to the planet, her voice quiet but fearful, "then the galaxy should be very afraid." Deep underground, Marcus Webb worked 16-hour shifts without pause. Sleep was optional now. He was part of Project Phoenix, the secret initiative that had become humanity's obsession. The complex stretched for miles beneath what used to be the Australian outback, a labyrinth of tunnels, machinery, and half-finished starships. Sparks flew from welding torches as teams assembled armor plating the size of buildings. Massive rail cannons were being calibrated on automated rigs. Workers moved like ants, every motion fueled by grief and determination. Marcus oversaw the weapons systems division. His rail cannon designs were being tested for integration with the new ships, war machines unlike anything humanity had built before. "Pressure tolerance test complete," reported a young technician beside him. "Barrel integrity stable at 98%. "Not enough," Marcus said. "Run it again." The technician hesitated. "Sir, if we push it again, we risk meltdown." "Run it again." The machine screamed as the magnetic coils charged once more, electricity arcing along the barrel. A deep thrum filled the chamber, like thunder caught in a box. When the test ended, Marcus checked the readings. 99.8. He finally nodded. "Better." The technician glanced at him nervously. "You ever gonna take a break, boss?" Marcus didn't answer. His eyes lingered on the small photo taped to the side of his workstation, a smiling woman and two little girls, frozen in time. He turned back to the weapon and whispered, "You'll make them proud." In orbit around the moon, the Luna yards had transformed into a fortress of industry. What had once been civilian ship docks were now surrounded by massive defense arrays. Under Admiral Chen's command, humanity had converted every resource into one purpose: survival through superiority. A holographic projection hovered before her, a blueprint of a new ship design. Sleek, black, and sharp-edged, it bore the name HDS Remembrance. Colonel Martinez gestured toward it proudly. "Our first capital-class warship, ma'am, designed for deep space combat, stealth hull plating, rail batteries, missile swarms. She'll be ready in 1 month." Chen looked at the digital model, feeling the weight of every life lost pressing down on her shoulders. "Remembrance," she said softly, "a fitting name. She'll be the first of many." Chen's gaze hardened. "Make sure she's perfect. Humanity won't get a second chance." Across the stars, in the Zenthak Dominion, Overseer THRL sat in his private chamber surrounded by luxury: crystal walls, flowing water, and the scent of alien incense. 6 months had passed since his fleet's victory over Earth, and his name was being taught in military academies as an example of strategic excellence. He was, in his own mind, a savior of his people. The galaxy's newest threat, humanity, had been crushed. "Any new reports from the human system?" he asked lazily, sipping a dark amber drink. His intelligence officer, Zeltos, bowed slightly. "Minimal activity, Overseer. No transmissions, no ship movements. The humans appear to have collapsed into total silence." THRL smiled, his sharp teeth glinting. "As expected, their spirit is broken. Reduce surveillance frequency. No need to waste resources." But Zeltos hesitated. "Sir, our probes did detect faint industrial signatures from the inner system. It might indicate rebuilding." THRL waved a dismissive hand. "Let them rebuild their graves. The humans are finished." Zeltos said nothing more, but as he left the chamber, unease gnawed at him. He had studied humans longer than most Zenthak officers. He knew their history: wars, revolutions, miracles of invention born from desperation. He knew silence was not surrender. And so, without authorization, he ordered a single Zenthak scout ship to the edge of the human solar system. "Observe, report, do not engage." 3 days later, that scout ship arrived near Pluto. It lasted 30 seconds. 3 unidentified objects appeared out of the asteroid shadows, small, fast, deadly. The Zenthak captain barely had time to raise shields before the first rail cannon round hit. The second tore through the hull. The third vaporized the reactor. The transmission cut off mid-scream. Zeltos waited for the scout's report. It never came. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen reviewed the test footage. The camera showed 3 human fighters darting through the void, black as shadow and nearly invisible to sensors. Their magnetic drives left no heat signature. When the enemy scout appeared, the fighters struck, precise, coordinated, ruthless. "Successful test," said Colonel Martinez, unable to hide his satisfaction. Chen nodded slowly, "And no survivors." "None." She leaned back in her chair, eyes cold. "Good." She turned to the holographic map of the solar system. Red dots represented construction zones, blue for defense stations, yellow for resource transports. Everywhere she looked, there was activity. "6 months ago, they burned our world," she said quietly. "Now we're turning those ashes into steel." Martinez met her gaze. "And when the fleet is ready." Chen's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "Then we return the favor." In the depths of the galaxy, Ambassador Kellith's ship recorded the faint flash from the destroyed Zenthak scout, a bright pinprick against the black sea of stars. She replayed it several times, her heart sinking with each loop. "Confirmed energy signature," said her aide. "Human origin." Kellith closed her eyes. "So it begins." She turned her gaze toward the endless dark where Earth lay hidden. "May the stars forgive us all. The galaxy believes humanity is silent. But the silence hides thunder. Earth is not waiting for peace, it's forging vengeance in the dark." The silence around Earth was deliberate. A silence that deceived the galaxy, concealed the flames of industry, and echoed with the heartbeat of vengeance. Beneath the planet's scarred surface, and across its scattered colonies, humanity was transforming grief into machinery. The world that had once built art, music, and dreams now built only one thing: weapons. The remembrance floated in the darkness above the moon, half-constructed but already magnificent. Her black hull absorbed light instead of reflecting it, as if she were carved from the void itself. Massive rail cannons lined her spine like the teeth of some ancient predator, and missile pods were embedded beneath layers of composite armor that could shrug off plasma fire. Inside her unfinished corridors, Marcus Webb walked among teams of engineers who worked with silent devotion. The rhythmic clang of tools echoed through the ship, mingling with the deep hum of fusion reactors warming for the first time. "Power test commencing," called one of the technicians. Marcus watched the readouts on his wrist console. The numbers climbed slowly, then faster: voltage, coil temperature, magnetic field strength. "Hold it there," he said. "If we push too far, we'll—" A sudden flash of light cut through the corridor. The lights flickered. Sparks burst from a console. One worker screamed as smoke filled the air. Marcus rushed forward, slamming the emergency cutoff switch. The hum died. Silence returned. "Everyone all right?" "Minor burns, sir," one of the engineers replied, clutching his arm. "We can patch it." Marcus nodded. "You patch him too. We don't waste people." He crouched to check the scorched console and muttered, "Too much current in the third loop. These superconductors weren't designed for this kind of load." His assistant, a young woman named Rana, handed him a tool. "Neither were we," she said quietly, "but we're still here." Marcus gave a grim half-smile. "Yeah, and so is the fight." He stood, wiping soot from his hands, and looked up through the ship's transparent observation dome. The stars gleamed cold and distant, but to him they looked like targets. Far away, Admiral Chen Wei stood in the Pacific Command Center, surrounded by data streams showing every sector of humanity's revival. Factories on Earth, yards on Luna, refineries on Ceres, every dot of light represented defiance. Colonel Martinez approached with a data pad. "We've reached operational readiness on the asteroid foundries. They're producing structural alloys 10 times stronger than pre-war titanium. Estimated yield, enough for 2 more ships a week." Chen nodded. "And the colonies?" "Mars is operational. Titan's labs are developing adaptive AI for targeting systems. Even the mining rigs on Europa are producing plasma capacitors." "Good," Chen said. "Keep it quiet. I don't want a whisper reaching outside the system." Martinez hesitated. "Admiral, what happens when the rest of the galaxy realizes what we're doing?" Chen's voice was calm, but her eyes burned like molten steel. "By then, it'll be too late." In the Vorine consulate orbiting the neutral station Elithar Prime, Ambassador Kelleth stood before the Galactic Council, her luminous skin dimmed with anxiety. She raised her voice above the chorus of alien delegates. "We must not ignore this. The humans have not perished, they are preparing." The council chamber filled with murmurs. A tall insectoid diplomat from the Quelith Confederacy clicked its mandibles. "Preposterous. The Zenthak burned their planet. No species could recover from such destruction in 6 months." "They are not like us," Kelleth insisted. "They are different. They adapt faster than logic allows." A scaled ambassador from the Drax Dominion scoffed. "You sound afraid, Vorine. Are you suggesting the primitives might retaliate?" Kelleth met the Draxian's slitted eyes. "I am suggesting that if they do, it will not be retaliation. It will be extinction for someone." Her words silenced the room. The council speaker, a crystalline being whose voice shimmered like wind chimes, finally spoke. "You propose we intervene." "I propose we watch closely," Kelleth said, "and pray we never see what they're building." In orbit around Mars, the Remembrance completed her first power cycle. When her engines flared to life, the red planet's dust shifted in the thin air, stirred by a wind that had not existed before. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge, surrounded by consoles glowing a soft blue. Engineers and officers worked quietly, their movements crisp, focused. "Status," she said. "Main power stable, reactor output at 93%, weapons cooling systems operational." Chen looked out the viewport at the vast, dark expanse of space. The ship's hull reflected nothing, as if she were a shadow moving through a dream. "Open a channel," Chen ordered, fleet-wide. A tone echoed, connecting her to every shipyard, every underground base, every hidden human outpost. "This is Admiral Chen Wei," she began, her voice calm and sharp as a blade. "We were attacked, we were left for dead, but humanity doesn't die easily." She paused, letting the silence fill the spaces between her words. "We are not building ships for conquest. We are building them for remembrance. Every beam of steel, every round of ammunition, every ship that leaves dry dock carries the name of a city they destroyed, of a family they murdered. We will not beg for mercy. We will not wait for peace. We will decide our own fate, and the galaxy will never forget us again." The command channel went silent, and then, from every speaker across the system, came a single sound. The synchronized beat of fists striking metal. 1,000, then 1,000,000, echoing through the void. The sound of unity. On the far edge of the system, Marcus Webb stood on an observation platform, staring at the first completed ships as they launched from Luna's docks. Each ship bore a name carved in bold white letters: Jakarta, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, New Cairo, Sydney. He traced his fingers along the etched surface of one hull, where 3 small names had been added near the prow: Sarah Webb, Emma Webb, Lisa Webb. The words blurred as his eyes filled with tears. He hadn't cried since the day of the attack. He had promised himself he wouldn't. But now, as the engines ignited and the ship began to move, something inside him cracked. "They'll see you coming," he whispered, voice trembling, "and they'll remember." Zenthak Space. Commander Zelthos stared at the last transmission his lost scout ship had sent before being destroyed, a single frame showing 3 small, fast-moving objects. He enhanced the image again and again, studying the blurred shapes. They were clearly not Zenthak, not council-built. The drive signatures were unfamiliar, smaller, colder, far more efficient. He leaned closer, his heart pounding. Humans. The door behind him hissed open. Overseer T.H. Harral entered, surrounded by his attendants. "Commander," T.H. Harral said with a tone of annoyance, "you've been spending too much time studying that debris." Zelthos turned to face him. "Sir, our scout ship was destroyed. It wasn't an accident. I believe humanity is rebuilding." T.H. Harral laughed, a dry, metallic sound. "Rebuilding what? Graves, you overestimate them. They're animals with toys." Zelthos straightened. "With respect, sir, those animals killed a Zenthak vessel in seconds. If they are truly gone, why silence? Why destroy our probe?" T.H. Harral waved a claw dismissively. "Coincidence. A malfunction. The humans are no longer a concern. You will stop wasting resources on ghost stories." He turned to leave, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Let them rot in their ashes." Zelthos watched him go, a chill running down his spine. "They're not rotting," he whispered. "They're sharpening." Back on Earth, deep within the Pacific Command Complex, Chen reviewed the fleet's construction schedule with Colonel Martinez. "We'll have 100 ships in 6 months," Martinez said. "Another 100 within a year." Chen's eyes glimmered in the blue light of the holographic map. 200 warships, enough to make the Zenthak remember what fear feels like. "And the name of the fleet, Admiral?" She smiled faintly. "Remembrance Fleet." She turned toward the window overlooking the shipyards, where hundreds of sparks from welding torches danced like stars. "In memory of the 20 billion they killed," she said softly, "and for the billions who survived." On the Harmony's light, Ambassador Kelleth sat alone in her quarters, staring at the faint transmission from the destroyed Zenthak probe. Her instincts screamed at her. This was only the beginning. "Forgive them," she whispered to the stars. "They lost too much to forgive themselves. The first warship is born." The galaxy turns away, unaware that vengeance now has a fleet. And for the first time in human history, the darkness belongs to them. 1 year after the bombardment, the solar system no longer slept. Every moon, asteroid, and station hummed with activity. The silence that the galaxy mistook for extinction was now the sound of engines igniting, reactors poolsing, and weapons being forged in the dark. From the farthest mining rigs near Neptune to the hidden bases under the crust of Mars, one name echoed through encrypted transmissions and coded signals. Operation Remembrance. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the observation deck of Remembrance Prime, the flagship of the growing human fleet. Outside, 200 warships floated in formation, their matte black hulls catching faint glimmers of reflected starlight. Each ship bore a name of loss: Jakarta, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, New Cairo, Sydney, Berlin, Moscow. Every name was a wound that had learned how to strike back. Colonel Martinez joined her, holding a datapad full of status reports. Engines calibrated, weapons charged, fleet synchronization complete, he said. Every ship is ready for deployment, Admiral. Chen didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was locked on the ships beyond the glass, her reflection overlapping their silhouettes. How many people? She asked quietly. Just over 600,000 across the entire fleet. 600,000 souls, Chen murmured, to avenge 20 billion. Martinez nodded grimly. We don't need numbers, we need purpose. Chen turned toward him, her voice steady as cold iron. And we have that. Meanwhile, deep in the Vorine diplomatic outpost orbiting Elithar Prime, Ambassador Kelleth received an urgent communique from a merchant vessel near the edge of human space. Unregistered activity, the captain's message said. Multiple artificial energy signatures in the Sol system, power readings off the scale, not natural, recommend further investigation. Kelleth's heart sank. She had feared this day was coming. Open a channel to the Galactic Council, she ordered. Her aide hesitated. Ambassador, the Council already dismissed your last 3 warnings. Then they'll hear this one, Kelleth said firmly. Because if they don't, she turned toward the holographic display of Earth system glowing red with activity. Then the next time they look this way, it won't be light they see, it will be fire. On the Zenthak homeworld, Overseer THRL basked in luxury and pride. The Zenthak High Council had declared his conquest of Earth a galactic stabilizing act. His name was carved into monuments. His face appeared in propaganda broadcasts. He was certain history would remember him as the man who protected the galaxy from a dangerous, rising species. When Commander Zelthos requested another meeting, THRL nearly denied it, but curiosity won. Zelthos entered the chamber, armor polished but his expression grim. Overseer, he began, we must reevaluate our assumptions about the humans. THRL sighed, still chasing phantoms, Commander. Not phantoms, Zelthos said sharply, proof. He placed a holodisk on the table. It projected the image of a destroyed scout ship, twisted metal, glowing debris, and 3 small craft streaking away into darkness. These signatures match no known technology, Zelthos continued. High acceleration, compact reactors, rail weaponry, they killed the ship in under 30 seconds. THRL's smirk faded slightly. And your conclusion? Zelthos met his superior's eyes. They're rebuilding. THRL waved the projection away. Impossible. Our intelligence reports show no transmissions, no trade, no off-world traffic. That's exactly my point, Zelthos said. Silence that perfect is never natural, they're hiding. THRL turned away, his patience gone. Enough! I will not have my officers spread paranoia. Humans are primitive animals, Commander. Let them rot in the ashes of their own arrogance. Zelthos stiffened. Yes, Overseer, but in his mind the words echoed differently. Animals don't hunt like this. Back in the Sol system, the finishing touches on humanity's fleet were nearly complete. Marcus Webb walked through the massive hangar bays of the asteroid shipyard Erebus Prime, where the last of the Remembrance-class warships were being fitted with rail batteries. Workers moved in silence. They didn't talk much anymore. There wasn't time for talk or laughter or hope, just purpose. Pressure integrity check on battery chamber 3, Marcus ordered. 75% stable, sir, a voice replied from below. Heating coils within tolerance. Good, keep them that way. As the engineers worked, Marcus moved toward a glass observation window that looked out at the fleet assembling beyond. The black ships hung motionless against the stars, their angular designs sharp as blades. He rested his hand on the cold surface and whispered, "They'll never see it coming." Behind him, Rana approached. "You still talk to them?" Marcus glanced back. "Who?" "Your family." He nodded once, his voice low. "Every day." Rana looked down. "You think this will bring them peace?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "No, but it'll bring justice." On the bridge of Remembrance Prime, Admiral Chen watched the final synchronization of the fleet's navigation systems. Rows of blue icons turned green, one by one. until the entire display glowed like a constellation of vengeance. Colonel Martinez approached, standing at attention. Slipspace coordinates are locked, ma'am. Destination, Zenthak Border System Cache Nebula. Chen nodded slowly, and our message to the Galactic Council. Unsent as per your order. Good, Chen said. Let them sleep in peace while we teach the galaxy what happens when you wake a human nightmare. Martinez hesitated, then said quietly, permission to speak freely. Granted. I keep thinking about the cost. We'll win, sure, but how many of us will be left afterward? Chen turned to him, eyes shadowed by exhaustion but burning with resolve. Colonel, victory always demands a cost, but extinction, she paused, her voice a whisper of steel, costs everything. Martinez gave a short nod. Understood. Then ready the fleet, Chen ordered. We depart in 12 hours. 12 hours later, the black ships of Earth rose from the shadows of the moon and the asteroids. Engines flared in silence. Slipspace drives began to hum. Across every ship, crews stood at their stations, hearts pounding in sync with the rhythmic pulse of the countdown. Marcus stood on the deck of HDS Jakarta, his hands gripping the cold railing as he listened to the command frequency. Attention all vessels, Admiral Chen's voice came through, calm and steady. This is not revenge, this is remembrance. We carry the names of the dead and we carry their purpose. The Zenthak thought they could destroy humanity. Instead, they built something new, something stronger. Her voice grew softer. Make them remember the day they made that mistake. On every ship, crews saluted in silence. Jump sequence commencing in 5, 4, 3, 2. The void folded, and humanity disappeared from the solar system. 3 days later, deep in Zenthak space, border patrols detected something strange. A ripple faint, wide, unnatural, spreading across the edge of their sensors. Then, one by one, the patrol ships went dark. No distress calls, no wreckage. Just silence. On Elithar Prime, Ambassador Kelleth received the news first. The Council's intelligence networks were buzzing. Zenthak outposts had gone offline, entire squadrons missing. She stared at the transmission logs and whispered, "It's begun." Her aide swallowed nervously. "Should we send a delegation to mediate?" Kelleth looked up, her normally soft voice now heavy with grief. "There will be no mediation. The time for peace ended the moment the sky burned." In Zenthak high orbit, Overseer T.H.R.Al attended a ceremony celebrating the anniversary of Human Pacification Day. He raised a crystal glass in toast as music played through the grand hall. "To order, to security, to a galaxy free from chaos," he declared. Then halfway through his speech, a guard rushed in. "Overseer, urgent transmission from the border fleet." T.H.R.Al frowned. "What is it?" "Multiple contacts, sir. Unknown vessels, they've opened fire." T.H.R.Al's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. "How many ships?" he demanded. 200, sir." 200, impossible. "They're human, Overseer." The hall went silent, and far above the Zenthak homeworld, hidden in the glow of distant nebulae, a dark fleet emerged, silent, precise, and furious as a storm. The silence is broken. 200 human warships have entered Zenthak space. The galaxy will soon learn what vengeance looks like when born from ashes. The Crimson Nebula was a graveyard of dying stars. Red clouds of gas swirled like blood in the void, lit by the faint glow of ancient suns. It was here at the edge of Zenthak space that humanity's silence finally ended. 200 human warships emerged from slipspace in perfect formation, dark, angular shapes gliding through the nebula's crimson mist like predators. Their engines were silent. Their hulls bore the names of the dead. On the flagship Remembrance Prime, Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge, her face illuminated by the soft blue light of the tactical display. Around her, officers worked with calm precision, fingers dancing over glowing controls. "Fleet in position, Admiral," reported Colonel Martinez. "All ships report combat readiness." Chen's eyes never left the display, and the Zenthak. "Enemy fleet advancing, ma'am. 500 ships, heavy cruisers, carriers, and escorts. They're forming up along the nebula's outer rim." Chen gave a slow nod. "Good, let them come to us." She looked down at the names inscribed along the edge of the console: Jakarta, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Sydney. Her fingers brushed over them lightly. Let's begin. On the HDS Jakarta, Marcus Webb stood in the command pit beside Captain Yara Idris. The bridge shook slightly as the ship's magnetic coils charged, a low rumble echoing through the hull like a sleeping beast waking up. "Rail systems primed," said Yara, 12 rounds chambered. Marcus's heart pounded as he stared at the main viewport. Beyond the crimson haze, faint shapes appeared, hundreds of Zenthak warships gliding into view. For a brief moment he saw beauty in it, the way their engines shimmered like molten gold, the way their formation moved with precise elegance. Then he remembered Jakarta, the flash of white light, the screams, the silence that followed. His hands clenched into fists, fire when ready. On the Zenthak command ship Zethra Prime, Overseer Thral watched the human fleet appear with disbelief. "They dare enter our space," he hissed. Tactical officers scrambled to relay orders. "Their ships are small, Overseer. Inferior hulls, outdated designs. Our shields will hold." Thral leaned forward. "Then crush them. Show the galaxy what happens when insects challenge giants." The command deck filled with the hum of charging weapons. Hundreds of Zenthak plasma batteries began to glow, spheres of light building in intensity before firing across the void. The first volley struck. Blue-white beams tore through the nebula, lighting up space like a storm of lightning. Dozens of human ships vanished behind the glare. Thral smiled. "It is done." But the smile faded a moment later when the light cleared, and the human fleet was still there. On Remembrance Prime, Chen watched the impacts ripple harmlessly across their stealth-hardened armor. The plasma blasts left molten scars, but did not penetrate. "Damage?" she asked calmly. "Minimal, hull temperature rising, but within limits," Martinez reported. Chen's eyes narrowed. "Then it's our turn." She raised her hand. "Fire all rail batteries." The order carried across every channel of the fleet. In unison, hundreds of electromagnetic coils roared to life. The silence of the void shattered as tungsten slugs, each the size of a car, launched at a fraction of light speed. The first impact tore through a Zenthak cruiser like paper. The second cracked the shield of a destroyer. The third hit a carrier's reactor, vaporizing it in a single blinding flash. Inside the nebula, where light diffused like smoke, it looked as though red stars were being born, only these stars screamed as they died. "Impossible," Thral shouted, slamming his fist into the console. "Our shields cannot be penetrated by kinetic fire." But the evidence was right there. The human weapons bypassed their energy barriers entirely. "Sir," cried the tactical officer, "we're detecting shield harmonics collapsing across the fleet. They've found a way to disrupt them." Thral stared at the display, his mind refusing to believe what he saw. They were primitives. "Not anymore," said a voice behind him. Commander Zelthos had entered quietly, eyes locked on the screen. "You underestimated them, Overseer. You turned a species into a cause." Thral snarled. "Enough, send in the carriers, launch all fighters, overwhelm them." Zelthos nodded slowly, but said nothing. In his heart, he already knew how this battle would end. In the crimson fog, human fighters moved like shadows, fast, silent, deadly. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the Admiral's niece, piloted one of the new Falcon-class interceptors. The cockpit lights reflected off her determined eyes as she wove through debris and enemy fire. "Delta Squadron, target their aft shield nodes," she commanded. "We take out their engines, not their hulls." 12 human fighters darted toward a Zenthak cruiser, dodging plasma bolts and weaving through explosions. Sarah's targeting display locked on, and she squeezed the trigger. Her missiles streaked forward, small, intelligent projectiles that swarmed and coordinated mid-flight like hunting birds. They converged on the same spot, detonating in a single synchronized blast. The Zenthak cruiser's rear shields flickered and died. Moments later, a rail slug from the HDS Jakarta punched through the exposed hull, splitting the ship in half. "Target down," Sarah said, voice steady. Her comm crackled. "Excellent work, Delta Lead. Proceed to next target." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. "Copy that, moving on." On the HDS Jakarta, Marcus watched the Zenthak formation begin to fracture. "They're falling back," said Yara. "Keep pressure on their flank," Marcus replied. "Fire pattern Gamma 6. Rail cannons thundered again, sending shockwaves through the ship. Marcus felt the recoil through his bones. It was a sound that no longer frightened him, it comforted him. It meant they were fighting back. Then a red warning light flashed on his console. "Incoming," Yara shouted. A Zenthak destroyer, engines burning, charged directly toward them, shields flickering, plasma weapons glowing. It was a suicide run. "Brace!" The destroyer's weapons fired point-blank. Energy bolts ripped across the hull, throwing Marcus to the floor. Sparks erupted. Systems failed. "Damage control," he shouted, struggling to his feet. "Shields at 30%. Reactor containment stable." Marcus gritted his teeth. "Return fire." The Jakarta's main cannon spun up, power surging through the magnetic rails. With a sound like thunder, it fired. The slug hit the Zenthak destroyer dead center, piercing through its reactor. The enemy ship exploded in a blossom of fire, scattering molten debris across space. Marcus wiped blood from his face and looked up at the viewport. The nebula glowed with 1,000 tiny infernos. "Jakarta still fights," he muttered. "We're not done yet." After 6 hours of continuous combat, the once mighty Zenthak fleet was in ruins. Ships drifted in pieces. Plasma fires burned in the void. The crimson clouds of the nebula had turned darker, thick with debris. On Zethra Prime, THRL's command ship shook under impact after impact. "Overseer," shouted his officer, "half the fleet is destroyed. We've lost all forward carriers." "Retreat," THRL screamed. "Pull back to the home system, regroup." "But the humans—" "Do it." The remaining Zenthak ships began to fall back, engines flaring weakly as they limped away. But humanity didn't stop. On Remembrance Prime, Chen watched the tactical map as her ships pursued the retreating enemy. "They're running," Martinez said. "They should," Chen replied coldly, "but they won't get far." As the human fleet advanced, the comm channels filled with quiet, wordless determination. No victory cheers, no celebration. Just focus. Every gunner, pilot, and engineer aboard the fleet had lost someone. And each of them now fought for every face they would never see again. "Status?" Chen asked. 37 ships lost, 53 damaged, Martinez said. "Enemy losses exceed 70%. Chen nodded. "Good." She turned toward the forward viewport. The surviving Zenthak ships were burning across the horizon, their engines glowing faintly against the darkness. "Transmit message," Chen said. "To who?" "To everyone," she said. "The galaxy needs to hear this." Her voice carried across every frequency, translated into 100 alien languages. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of the Human Defense Fleet. 1 year ago, you watched as the Zenthak burned our world. You said nothing. Today you watch again, but this time it is their sky that burns. Remember this, humanity forgives, but we never forget." Far away on Elithar Prime, Ambassador Kellith stood before a broadcast screen showing the aftermath of the battle. Hundreds of Zenthak ships reduced to glowing wrecks. Her aide whispered, "They did it. They actually did it." Kellith's voice trembled. "No, they survived, but the galaxy may never recover. The Zenthak fleet lies shattered. Humanity stands victorious at the Crimson Nebula, but Admiral Chen gives no order to stop. The next target is clear, Zenthak Prime." 3 days after the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, the human fleet arrived above Zenthak Prime. 200 ships emerged from slipspace in silent precision, black against the blue-green world below. From orbit, the Zenthak homeworld looked peaceful, continents wrapped in forests, silver oceans glimmering beneath twin moons. But Admiral Chen Wei saw only a mirror of what Earth once was, before fire fell from the sky. "Fleet in formation," Colonel Martinez reported from his console. "All systems green, awaiting your command." Chen stood on the bridge of Remembrance Prime, her reflection faint in the viewport glass. Her eyes were steady, but her heart pounded with a weight she had carried for a year. 20 billion ghosts stood behind her, silent but present. She raised her hand slowly. "Deploy the blockade." Across space, the human fleet spread like a black halo around Zenthak Prime. Defensive satellites powered up, missile platforms unfolded, and rail batteries locked on the planet's orbital defenses. Moments later, the first Zenthak orbital guns opened fire. Lances of blue plasma streaked into the void, striking the forward ships. Shields flared. One destroyer vanished in a burst of light. "Return fire," Chen ordered calmly. The sky above Zenthak Prime lit up like a second sun. Rail slugs tore through orbital defense platforms. Missile swarms detonated in cascading waves of light. In under 10 minutes, every Zenthak station orbiting their homeworld was reduced to molten wreckage drifting through the void. The people below looked up and saw their own sky burning. Inside the Zenthak High Council chamber, panic erupted. "Activate the planetary shields," shouted one counselor. "They're already failing. Their weapons are too strong," another replied. Overseer Thrl stood before them, his once-proud uniform stained with ash and fear. "We must fight back," he roared. "Fight back with what?" cried a younger official. "Half our fleet is destroyed, our communications are jammed, and the humans control orbit. You promised us victory, Thrl. You promised safety." Thrl's voice faltered. "They cannot maintain this assault forever." "They don't need forever," said a deep, cold voice. Everyone turned. Commander Zelthos had entered the chamber, flanked by 2 soldiers. His armor was dented, scorched, a man who had survived when most had not. "You," Thrl hissed. "You disobeyed orders, you spread panic." "I warned you," Zelthos replied. "I told you they were rebuilding. I told you silence wasn't surrender." He stepped closer, eyes burning. "Now look what your arrogance has brought upon us." "Arrest him," Thrl shouted. No one moved. Zelthos looked around the room. "You can arrest me after you stop the sky from falling." In orbit, Marcus Webb stood at the viewport of HDS Jakarta, staring down at the planet. It looked so beautiful, too beautiful. Below the clouds, entire cities shimmered with silver architecture. Rivers cut through emerald valleys. He could almost imagine what Earth might have looked like once before everything burned. His commander's voice echoed through the intercom. "Target lock confirmed on all major military sites, awaiting Admiral Chen's authorization." Marcus's hands trembled slightly. He remembered his daughter's laughter, the smell of pancakes in the kitchen, the light that erased them all in one instant. He steadied himself. "Do it," he whispered. On Remembrance Prime, Chen stared at the tactical screen. "Targets locked." "Yes, Admiral. Orbital shipyards, weapons depots, military command centers," Martinez replied. "Civilian areas clear." "Transmission from the surface," the comm officer said suddenly. "Zenthak High Council requests communication." Chen's jaw tightened. "On screen." A moment later, the image of a Zenthak counselor appeared, pale, trembling, eyes wide with terror. "This is Counselor Vethrix of the Zenthak Collective. You have made your point, human. What do you want?" Chen stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "1 year ago," she began, her voice steady, "your fleet destroyed our world. You killed 20 billion of my people. You turned our cities to ash. Today we return not to annihilate you, but to deliver justice." The counselor swallowed hard. "If you attack our planet, you will kill millions of innocents." "There were innocents on Earth too," Chen said quietly. "Children, families, scientists, artists. Did you think their lives mattered less because they were human?" The counselor opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chen continued, "You have 2 options, surrender unconditionally or face extinction." The line went dead. Martinez looked at her. "Admiral, if they refuse." "Then," she said coldly, "we make sure they never refuse anyone again." Hours passed. No answer came from the surface. The human fleet waited in perfect silence, engines humming like distant thunder. Ambassador Kelleth, watching from her ship at the edge of the system, sent another urgent transmission. "Admiral Chen, this is Ambassador Kelleth of the Vorine Collective. Please do not do this. The Zenthak have surrendered their outer territories. They're terrified. If you bombard their world, you'll destroy millions of lives that had nothing to do with the war." Chen's face appeared on Kelleth's screen, calm but hardened by too much loss. "There were millions of lives on Earth too," she said softly, "and they burned them alive." "I know," Kelleth said, "but revenge won't bring them back." "This isn't revenge," Chen replied. This is remembrance. The galaxy must know what happens when someone thinks humanity can be broken. She ended the transmission. Kelith slumped back in her seat, eyes glistening. Then may the stars forgive you, Admiral. On Zenthak Prime, THRL stood before the High Council for what would be the last time. They're giving us one chance, said Counselor Vethrix. Surrender or die. THRL laughed bitterly. Surrender to primitives, never. Zelthos stepped forward. Then you doom us all. You would hand our people to their mercy, THRL spat. I would hand them a future, Zelthos snapped. You wanted to destroy them before they became a threat. Now they are gods with the fury of devils. THRL lunged forward, claws bared, but Zelthos's guards moved first. The overseer fell to the ground, restrained. Vethrix looked down at him, trembling. You said they would never reach our stars. THRL's eyes burned with madness, and I was wrong. In orbit, the tension reached breaking point. Chen stood motionless, her hands behind her back, eyes locked on the planet below. Martinez approached. Still no response from the surface. Planetary shields are weakening. Orders, Admiral. Chen hesitated for a long moment. Her crew waited in silence, every soul aboard holding its breath. Finally, she said, begin the strikes. Rail cannons roared. Missiles fell from orbit in perfect formation, streaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. But they did not target cities. They struck only the military installations, the shipyards, the weapons depots, the orbital gun platforms. Each impact was a message carved in fire across the planet's surface. This is what you did to us. This is your consequence. From the surface, the night sky blazed red and gold. The people of Zenthak watched in terror and awe as their own world trembled beneath the storm of vengeance. On the bridge of HDS Jakarta, Marcus watched as explosions rippled across the planet. His chest was tight. Rana's voice came softly beside him. You okay? He nodded, eyes still fixed on the burning world. I thought it'd feel better. She didn't reply. There was nothing to say. Hours later, the bombardment ended. Zenthak Prime's skis were filled with ash and debris, but the cities still stood. The war machine was gone, dismantled by precision strikes, but the people remained. Transmission from the surface, the comm officer reported. On screen, Chen said. Counselor Vethrix appeared again, eyes hollow. We surrender unconditionally. Chen nodded. Transmit your leaders to our custody for war crimes trials. Disarm your fleets. You will pay reparations for 50 years under human oversight. Vethrix bowed his head. It will be done. The connection cut. Around the bridge, the tension broke. Officers exhaled, some in relief, others in disbelief. Martinez turned to Chen. It's over. Chen looked out at the wounded planet. No, she said softly, it's only beginning. Ambassador Kelith watched from her distant ship as the human fleet began to disperse, forming patrol lines and observation posts around Zenthak Prime. Her aide whispered, they showed mercy. Kelith shook her head. No, they showed control. Mercy comes later. On the Zenthak homeworld, the fires still burned, but among the ruins, a strange new dawn began to rise. Children looked up at the sky, a sky once filled with pride and now filled with the ships of those they had wronged. And for the first time, the Zenthak understood fear not as power lost, but as judgment earned. The Zenthak surrender, humanity stands victorious. But as Admiral Chen watches the burning planet below, one question remains. If vengeance made them strong, what will peace make them now? 2 years after the day the sky burned, the world was quiet again. The oceans of Earth had cooled, the clouds had lost their crimson glow, the ash had settled into the soil, and from the ruins, humanity began to build again. They didn't build monuments of conquest. They built gardens. Cities once reduced to glass were now forests of green. Jakarta, where Marcus Webb had lost everything, had been reborn as a memorial park, 10 million trees planted in the names of the dead. Each one carried a small plaque, each plaque a story. Children played among them now, laughing in the sunlight, their voices echoing where screams had once been. The war was over, the vengeance complete, but the memory lived on. Marcus stood among the rows of trees, his hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. His eyes fell on 3 plaques near the memorial's center. Sarah Webb, age 9. Emma Webb, age 6. Lisa Webb, age 37. He knelt and touched each name gently, tracing the engraved letters with trembling fingers. "They'd like this," a soft voice said behind him. He turned. It was Admiral Chen, though she no longer wore the uniform. Her hair was streaked with silver, her once sharp posture softened by time. "Just Chen now," she said with a faint smile. "I retired." Marcus rose slowly. "I'm surprised you could." Chen's smile faded. "After what we did, retirement is the only thing left." They stood together in silence, the wind rustling through the trees. "Do you ever wonder," Marcus said quietly, "if we went too far?" Chen looked toward the horizon, where the rebuilt skyline shimmered beneath the morning sun. "Every day." "But we didn't have a choice." "No," Marcus said, "we didn't." Chen nodded, eyes distant. "And yet, sometimes I think the hardest part isn't the war, it's living after it." Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's vengeance spread like wildfire. To some, humanity became a symbol of resilience, the species that refused to die. To others, they were a warning, a civilization capable of unimaginable fury when pushed too far. On Zenthak Prime, the once proud empire now existed under human supervision. The towering cities still stood, but banners of the old regime were gone. The orbit above the planet was filled with human observation stations, silent sentinels ensuring peace through presence. The Zenthak military was dismantled, their fleets melted down, their weapons research forbidden for a century. War crimes trials were held in a newly built interstellar tribunal orbiting the neutral world of Virlia. And in a glass chamber at the center of that tribunal, Overseer Thral sat alone. He was thinner now, his once shining armor replaced by a simple gray uniform. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had seen the cost of his ambition. The chamber doors opened, a human guard entered. "It's time." Thral was escorted into the courtroom, where representatives of multiple species sat in judgment. One human, one Vorin, and one neutral observer from the Kelter Collective. Admiral-turned-Ambassador Chen sat behind the prosecution bench, her expression calm, unreadable. The lead judge, a human woman named Leona Kale, began the proceedings. "Overseer Thral of the Zenthak Collective, you stand accused of initiating an unprovoked planetary bombardment resulting in the deaths of 20 billion sentient beings. Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Thral rose slowly, his voice low and broken. "I believed I was protecting my people. I thought humanity's rise would bring chaos. I was wrong." He looked up, meeting Chen's gaze. "You were the chaos I feared and the justice I deserved." The chamber fell silent. Judge Kale's voice was firm. "The tribunal finds you guilty of genocide and crimes against sentient life. Sentence: death to be carried out within 30 standard days." Thral bowed his head. "Then let it be done." As he was led away, he glanced back at Chen one last time. "I tried to destroy you before you became dangerous. Instead, I made you unstoppable." Chen didn't respond. Her silence said enough. The execution was not public, but the news traveled fast. Across the stars, every broadcast repeated the same phrase. "Justice has been served." But for most humans, justice wasn't celebration, it was closure. The war hadn't brought happiness, it had only brought an end to the pain. On Zenthak Prime, Commander Zelthos oversaw the dismantling of the last military installation. His people no longer looked at humans with hatred, only resignation. He had been spared the tribunal for his early warnings and for preventing further bloodshed during the final hours. When a human officer approached him to confirm the dismantling order, Zelthos nodded. "Tell your admiral," he said quietly, "that we understand now. We should never have thought you were weak." The officer tilted his head. "Do you hate us?" Zelthos's mandibles twitched faintly. "No, I fear you, and that is far worse." Months later, humanity took its place among the Galactic Council for the first time. The chamber was vast, a circular hall suspended in zero gravity, filled with thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. Holographic banners rippled with the emblems of each member civilization. When it was time, the speaker announced, We welcome the species Homo sapiens, the people of Earth, to the Galactic Council. Admiral Chen, now Ambassador Chen, rose from her seat, her uniform replaced by a simple gray diplomatic suit. She stood before the assembly, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber. "We come here not as conquerors," she began, "but as survivors. We did not seek war, war found us. And when it did, we learned two truths." She paused, scanning the crowd. First, peace is not the absence of strength. It is the wisdom not to use it. Second, mercy without memory invites history to repeat itself. Her gaze swept across the silent chamber. "We will never again be caught unprepared. We will never again beg for peace. But we will not become the monsters we fought. Humanity will stand for balance, for remembrance, and for restraint." The council chamber remained still for a long moment. Then, slowly, one by one, delegates began to nod. And for the first time, the galaxy applauded humanity, not for their power, but for their resolve. After the session, Ambassador Kelleth approached Chen in the quiet corridor outside. "That was a strong speech," Kelleth said gently. Chen smiled faintly. "You warned me once. You told me vengeance wouldn't bring peace. You were right." Kelleth's bioluminescent eyes glowed softly. "And yet you stopped short of destroying them. That shows wisdom." "We stopped," Chen said, "because we still remembered who we were." The Voreen nodded. "The galaxy needs species like yours, those who have seen the worst of themselves and still choose better." Chen looked out through a nearby viewport where the stars shimmered like distant fires. "Then help us keep choosing better." Kelleth extended her finned hand. Chen took it, two worlds once strangers, now allies. Years later on Earth, Marcus Webb stood beneath the Jakarta Memorial once more. The forest was full now, the trees towering and vibrant. Sunlight poured through the branches, painting golden patches on the ground. He closed his eyes and listened, to wind through leaves, to birds singing, to the soft laughter of children somewhere nearby. He smiled. A little girl approached, 7 years old, carrying a small sapling. She looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Sir," she said, "can you help me plant this one? It's for my grandpa, he died in the war." Marcus knelt, taking the sapling from her. "Of course, what's his name?" "Evan, he was a pilot." Marcus dug the soil with his hands, helping her place the roots carefully. "He was brave," he said. "They all were." The girl looked up. "Why do we plant trees for people who died?" Marcus paused, glancing at the horizon. The sky was blue again. "Because trees live a long time," he said softly. "And when they grow, they remind us that something good can come from ashes." The little girl smiled. "Then the sky isn't burning anymore." He looked up, tears catching in the sunlight. "No," he whispered, "now it's healing." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Admiral Chen stood at the memorial's edge, watching the wind ripple through the endless forest. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe. Beneath the trees, life had returned. Above them, the stars burned bright, not in fire but in peace. And in the quiet heart of that reborn world, humanity carried a new promise. They would never start another war. But if one ever came for them again, they would finish it. They burned our sky once. Now we carry its fire not for vengeance but for remembrance.